collective as well as ourselves, obviously. So this is a big awakening and a time to tune in. So I would suggest for the 11/11/11 date at 11/11 to tune into the 5 W's for yourself. Who am I going to be with? Where am I going to be at? What am I going to be doing? When am I going to pulse my intentions, which I would suggest 11:11 a.m. or p.m. ideally, not to say that anything else isn't important. Sometimes convenience is more important. And yeah, the who, what, where, when, and why. Why are you tuning in? Why are you pulsing your intention? These are activation portal energies, and we're talking about collective conscious energy in this sense. So very important to be aware of that level of it. Now I'd like to get a little more into a bigger, more universal cycle that is closing, which is the alignment with the Galactic Ecliptic plane, which many have misinterpreted it as meaning the end of existence or life or some kind of apocalypse. It is actually the end date of the Mayan calendar represents the sun aligning with the galactic ecliptic plane when the Earth precisely aligns on a power point, which is the winter solstice, which is the start of the year seasonally. So, and when the sun is aligned with the center of our galaxy on the horizontal plane, 2012 represents when it's also aligned on the vertical plane. Now this has taken hundreds and hundreds of years for the sun to slowly process closer and closer to the center of the galaxy on the winter solstice. So that's what these calendars have been denoting. And it's important to recognize that this isn't the Mayans. This is partly the Mayans. The Mayans probably had the clearest thing for us to understand at this time, but globally it's been recorded as the precessional change into the age of Aquarius. Again, hundreds of years to pass through the cusp or apex point or switching point in a field of sacred geometry dynamics, which is really what astrology is navigating, geometrical energy signatures. And they show us natural order. So what we're looking at then is a macro field reboot. When there's a new moon, there's monthly a new cycle that starts. When there's an eclipse, that's a whole new level of new cycles. All the new moons following until the next eclipse are related to that primary seed eclipse. Now, this is what's happening with the sun in the center of the galaxy. It's not just every year we have what we might call a new sun, where the sun aligns with the center of the galaxy, but every 26,000 years, or perhaps 13,000 years, there's 2 points in the Leo age and the Aquarian age, which are 13,000 years apart approximately. The 26,000 year cycle close is Aquarius when the sun is in Leo. So this brings us, or the Earth is in Leo, I should say, because the sun's in Aquarius. Now this brings that whole macro cycle into the level of eclipses that I was speaking about. So the 12/21/2012 at 11:11 a.m. GMT or Universal Time, both GMT and Universal Time, one and the same. This is when we have a galactic eclipse. So that's starting a 26,000 year cycle. Now, what are cycles? Ultimately, they're spirals. It's a movement in a circle, but the circle or the movement is creating a spiral because it's actually doing circles in movement. So that creates a spiral, obviously. Now, we can look at this like a spiral staircase. That spiral staircase has levels. These are the apex points. These are the galactic alignments. There are sub-levels. These are core key levels, where you might say the main door to the entrance of that level is. And this is the culmination of energies that's occurring right now, is bringing us up into this next frequency of vibration, which is why everything is speeding up in our perspective. It's more accurate to say the frequency is increasing, which is similar to saying it's speeding up, but our experience of the frequency increasing is that things are speeding up. So that's what the term fractal time compression relates to. Now, if you look at a spiral, and the closer that it gets to its center, it's all spirals, all movement goes in both directions at once. When it gets closer to the center, which also means it's getting further apart, there's a culmination climax. Like if you know about the Mandelbrot sequence, it gets to a point of maximum entropy or apparent chaos, overcomplication. I shouldn't say overcomplication. Things get very complicated, very involved. There's a lot going on. Maximum saturation of event per measure of time-space, or space-time. So that's what we call the singularity. It's a culmination of event. So not only is the potentiality going up, but the rate of manifestation and change is increasing as well as the frequency increases. The closer the spiral gets to the center, the faster it goes around in a circle. If you can see that in your third eye, take a moment to visualize that. That is this increasing frequency. So this is, again, as I've been mentioning, has been in process for hundreds of years. Basically, the cusp of the age of Aquarius started with the technological expansion and borderline explosion of technological advance occurred a couple of hundred years ago. And as we see now, it's advancing more and more and faster at an absolutely exponential rate. So it's very important to be aware of these things, because macro level change can feel overwhelming, and it's very important to be as conscious of that as possible and to simplify as much as possible, because stress is very hard on the body, the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies. So it's very, very important, beyond description, beyond words, how important it is to simplify and to move into higher levels of order. Now, this is what the cycles do. They bring us into higher levels of advanced potentiality and modalities. So what needs to fall away will fall away in the frequency, in the new frequencies, or I shall say the increasing frequencies and potentialities will make lower frequencies, modalities that can't withstand that frequency will become more and more obvious, frictional, and detrimental. So we have to let go of these outmoded structures that are so obviously not serving anymore. Some of them more, some of them less. We have to pay attention to these things. Big one, paying a lot of attention and being very aware to minimize stress by simplifying. Be as simple as possible. Now, when I say simple, there might be maybe a better word is efficient, and to weed out what is unimportant. Again, all of these, all the ways you can look at it, all the events, all the parts of our lives, all of these different things relate to the same principle of the outmoded falling away because of the integration of the new. And again, we're talking about increased frequency that is growing exponentially. That means it's faster and faster with each moment. Now, this might sound kind of overwhelming. So again, there's the simple way to look at this is, as I was saying, to know what's going on as much as possible, to weed out the disinformation that's all over the place for manipulative agendas, to tune into the intuition, which actually knows what suits each of us individually, to acknowledge that in a very objective way. And so we're balancing all levels of consciousness, the intuitive, the actual knowledge and information that we have, and our experiential wisdom, which is even more important, especially long-term, long-standing affirmations of our intuitive or learned faculties of what's going on. So, very important to be as aware of these things as possible and to tune in as much as possible, and to, again, recognize the wisdom of simplification. And it's always been true to have what you need in case of anything. That's always been true. It may always be true. It's better to have it and not need it. So I'm not trying to alarm anyone or anything like that. In fact, I would say most of the information out there is extremely alarming, and there's no affirmation of that at all, other than information from several sources that seem to believe in such unnatural things like a disaster. There is nothing in the Mayan texts, or people who have really studied this and worked on it, there's no affirmation whatsoever of catastrophe or anything like that. If there's an apocalypse, it's probably going to be an apocalypse of poor choices and detrimental modalities, because the frequency, we could call it love-evolution. It is an evolution into unity consciousness. That's what happens at a singularity point, at the culmination of a cycle. When the Mandelbrot sequence, for instance, reboots, it hits a complexity, and maximum complexity creates a singularity, which is a reunification. All the strings of energy get so wild in every direction that it actually causes what's related to a strange attractor. The strange attractor is the natural law reharmonizing over complexity. So when we know that, we know to do that in our lives as much as possible, as that's what nature's doing anyway. And as the ancients will tell us quite clearly, follow the field, follow the macro field. It's completely beyond our will, but our will can align with it or suffer in resistance accordingly. We can either ride the wave, the macro waves, the galactic dolphin wave as it's been called, the alpha waves of the galactic alignment, or all the way through the spectrum to resisting and needless suffering. So very important, beyond words how important that is. Now I'll start another section here, because there's obviously more to this than a simple 15-minute take. Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for part 2 with Universal Travel Agent, Yellow Star, Spectral Star Wizard.